Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to support a legacy code base using Cursor and the Telos platform. So Cursor or Claude Code is fantastic at working with legacy code bases. However, we still have the problem with software, which is the key person problem. There is so much information that is not in the code base, and this is where the Telos platform can really help. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to get started, set up an application, and start analyzing it, and let's do some development. All right, so first things first, we need to sign up. You can sign up from our website, and once you've signed up, you'll get this screen here. Put in your company name. I'm going to call it Andrew's Apps, and say I'm in New Zealand, and then we'll get going from here. So the Telos application is a web application where you're going to do some setup. It's essentially a ticketing system. Now, the reason why we start with tickets is that we treat each ticket as a session that the AI can attach to, add information to, and learn from. So we treat a ticket as essentially a unit of work. Now, in the Telos application, you can manage as many applications as you like. You'll see the pricing here. We'll just focus on a standard application today where you can run support, dev, and knowledge tickets. You can have a number of workflows. There are over 100 that come as part of the platform, and you can build your own. Each application will create a detailed blueprint containing not just documentation about the code, but information about the resources and dependencies of the code. We provide our MCP tools, and you need to use your own Claude API key. So if we come to the applications page, this is designed for running multiple applications, and there are a few steps we need to do to get started. So to add a Claude API key, you will need to sign up to Claude and buy some credits, and then come into your organization settings where we've got Andrew's Apps, and I'm going to add an AI model. Now, don't freak out. I'm going to delete this API key as soon as I've finished recording this video, but I've got this key from Claude, and I'm going to add it as a model. There's a few options here. I recommend just sticking with 4.5 initially, but Sonnet 4 has a little bit less, it's a very, very good reasoning model, but a little bit less reasoning than 4.5, which makes it a little bit less chatty, and less chatty equals less tokens. Haiku, less chatty still, and about a third of the cost. So, but whoops, I'm going to go Sonnet 4.5. There's a few settings here. The maximum number of tokens per ticket, 10 million, is quite high. It's really a safety feature to make sure that we don't get agents into kind of infinite loops. You can make that smaller. 1 million probably isn't enough. You'll definitely, when you're analyzing audio transcripts and things like that, you want it to be a couple of million. I find 25 tool uses is sufficient, but the output tokens, now keep in mind output tokens cost 5 times more than input tokens, so we do want to manage these carefully. But when we're writing documentation, I like it to be a little bit bigger. So that's our setup of our Claude model. Back to the onboarding, the next thing we're going to do is set up our MCP tools. So this link takes us to our marketing website, to the developers page, and we've got some instructions here. So the MCP tools, just grab this. This works in Cursor, but also works in Claude Code and other systems that support MCP servers. Over in Cursor, you'll come into settings, which I'm already on, and you can click the tools in MCP, add custom MCP. So we're just going to drop the JSON code in there, and then we're going to go and create a personal access token. So to create a personal access token, you're going to go to Edit Profile, click Manage Tokens, and create a token. Again, don't freak out. I'm going to delete this token as soon as this video is recorded. When I close the JSON down, you'll see that I now have an MCP server installed with 13 tools. These tools allow Cursor to interact with Kappa, who is the AI agent within the Telos platform. All right. Step 3, we are going to add an application. So when we add an application, now the system is designed for you to add as many and manage as many applications as you like. Now, what I would recommend though is that you think about who owns the application. If you own the application, then just create it. However, if you're adding an application for a customer, then come across to the organization settings and add a customer. In this demo, I'm going to show a product called TimeSlice. So I'm just going to set TimeSlice up as a separate customer, which allows me to invite in their team. I can set up different AI models for this customer, and I can also manage contracts for this customer. Now when I add an application for TimeSlice, I'm going to select TimeSlice as the customer, TimeSlice as the application. Now I left that application description empty, but it's actually a very useful field. I'll come back and show you later, but it becomes part of the system prompt. So we're able to put application-specific rules in there. You'll now see the dashboard has one application on it. What we're going to do is we're going to click into TimeSlice, and we're now on the TimeSlice application dashboard. So the main part of this dashboard is a ticketing system, and you can see that there's a Kanban board here. There's a number of different boards. I'll show you later how to create these boards using AI, but they're essentially intended for, you might have development sprints on the go, you might have support work, and so this onboarding one helps us get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a knowledge ticket. So what I recommend you do for a legacy application is start by recording a demo of the application. Create a ticket called TimeSlice Demo, and there's two ways you can record the demo. I would often record a demo which might take, say, up to an hour by the time you've got a big application, you're doing a detailed walkthrough, and you can use this record button here to do a screen recording, or you can use a system like Fathom. I recorded a 10-minute video of me using this application, and I'm just going to drop that transcript. I'll delete that last line, which was a half sentence. Drop that into the comment on the ticket. Now, because this is a knowledge ticket, it's not intended for any work to be done. It's just intended for us to be putting information into the system. So once we've got the information we want on the ticket, now if we did a recording here, you would have the recording showing and transcript on the ticket. You can drag and drop files on, they'll all get converted into text. Then click Resolve. You'll notice at the top here, Kappa, which is the AI agent, is now running. Actually, in fact, Kappa isn't running, Delta is. We've got two AI agents. Kappa helps you with planning, and Delta helps you with managing documentation. So when Delta runs, now I've left the audit trail on currently, so you can turn it off by unselecting these options here, including the robot, but you can see the transcript I dropped in, and now you can see a lot of the AI, the tools that are being used. And what you'll see has happened is when the AI so when Delta wants to do a big job, so you'll notice there's quite a few resources, concepts, and stories that it has identified. Because this is quite a lot of work to do, it's created a checklist so that it can just go through these items one at a time. What it's going to do is it's currently creating and building and maintaining the blueprint. And you'll notice that there are 4 different things that it's looking at here. So resources are really important, and if I come across to the resources section in the menu, you'll see that it's starting to create these resources in the background. So the resources are the infrastructure that the software uses, but they're also dependencies. So for example, Workflow Max is an integration, and in my demo I said that TimeSlice integrates with Workflow Max, and Workflow Max is a required system. So I didn't actually provide it much information, so the documentation is going to start off quite light, but it's important that we understand what are the moving parts of this system. Now, if you're managing multiple applications, then resource types become quite useful, because this allows us to, if we have a system like Stripe, we might want to look at, okay, which of our applications are using Stripe, so that we can start to share information and manage them, changes across multiple applications. So the AI is going to be building these resources and resource types automatically, and it's going to be starting to create documentation for them. To come back to that ticket, so I'm going to click on the tickets, and then I'm going to look at recent tickets. You might wonder where that ticket has gone. It's been marked as closed, and closed tickets are hidden by default. But under recent tickets, I can see it there. I can come back in, and it will take a couple of minutes to just process these one at a time. So the other thing that it's doing, so I mentioned it's building the blueprint. You can come over here to blueprint, and you will see your blueprint for each application. If you click on the name of the application, you'll get this blueprint browser. Now, this is showing us things that have changed recently. And one of the things that it's added is this concept of a client. Now, what you'll notice is when I copy pasted in raw transcript, it's quite wordy and it's just a lot of words. We need to be quite careful with raw information. A lot of raw transcripts, a lot of raw documentation that will be produced by your coding agent is useful to a point, but actually what we want to do is extract the concepts and information out of that so that we can use those. So what we're going to do now is we've said, okay, this software has a concept of a client. We need to track everything we know about a client, the idea that it represents an organization of individual, blah, 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 blah. This is just the AI starting to build up essentially like a digital twin of the software. Like I said at the start, this is about being the key person. What does a key person need to know? They need to know where all the moving parts are. They need to know access to all the systems. They need to know, what's involved and where is it, and they need to understand the business concepts. Like I know exactly what a client is. If I just hit refresh, more things will be coming in. I know what appointments are. So this is really starting to help us build this blueprint of the application. It's only going to go so far though, because there was only limited information that I put on the ticket. So there's a couple of things that I would like to show you, but I would like this ticket to finish processing first. So we'll come down here and you can see that. Let me show you around the ticket screen, because as you can see, this is a comment. Comment can have a checklist on it. There's a lot of audit trail, and you can see these workflows completing, and you can also see the number of tokens that it used to complete the workflow with the total tokens at the top. So because it's a pretty standard ticketing system, you can assign it, set a priority, a due date. Stages are allowing us to set up different projects, sprints, things like that. Action items over here are intended for both the AI and for humans. Obviously, sometimes Kappa will complete things in an action item, sometimes Cursor or Claude Code will complete them, and sometimes you'll complete them. So while this is finishing running, you'll notice that there are a number of workflows. And so review blueprint is a workflow, review resource is a workflow. Over in the workflows tab, these are all system workflows, so they don't appear in your list. You can create your own workflows. If you click on the triggers, you'll see a lot of the system workflows and the triggers that are causing them to run. The triggers are here, and they allow you to customize your own triggers. So some of them have shortcodes. You can change that shortcode. Review blueprint, for example, which we just saw running, is a system workflow that runs when a ticket is closed, whereas review resource is a system workflow that runs based on a ticket action. So there's a number of different triggers, and what I'm going to record another video on how to set up workflows. So for now, let's just run with the system workflows. Okay, I'm going to come back to this ticket, and it's still processing, which is fine if I wasn't waiting for it. but I would like it to finish. So I'll find something else to tell you about. Well, it just runs these last few things. Let's come back and have a look at the blueprint, because this documentation, as you can see, is being built up where it's 6 resources, 8 concepts, and 1 story. You can click overview here. You can download this as a PDF. In fact, if you do download it as a PDF, it's quite a useful document to drop into Claude or ChatGPT and provide it with a ton of context about your application. So keep in mind that this was based on a 10-minute video. What we're going to do next is going to pad this out quite significantly. All right. I'm just going to keep talking and filling in space while it continues processing this ticket. So you notice it is taking quite a lot of time. AI agents are not necessarily quick. It's being very, very thorough. What you will notice it doing, obviously, it's reviewing, it's processing this transcript, and it's saying, give me, it's extracting quite a lot of information. So this is what gives us good context for Claude Code, Cursor, and also for our own tickets later. What I'll do, actually, while we wait for this to finish, is I'll just come in and I'll show you an example of a support request, because when we're adding a ticket, it's going to go through a slightly different process. So I'm just going to make up a ticket, like a bug that is related to a timesheeting product. So, when adding a timesheet, seeing a red dot, the timesheet has a job, client, and task, but the red dot won't go away. You'll notice when support requests come in, they use language that aren't necessarily correct. However, I've used a bunch of language here that AI would, AI knows what a timesheet is, it knows what a job is, a client is, but we actually want it to use our definitions of these words. So once I've added this, and I can drop in some screenshots, actually let's just, here we go, timesheet with a red dot. So that's a poor screenshot, but actually, what I'll do is I'll show you this feature here. I'm going to record the entire screen, and I hope the screen recording works while screen recording is working. So over here in TimeSlice, I've got a timesheet, I've added it, I've put in a client, which is Bob, I've put in a job, which is my job, and actually there's no task here, there's nothing in the list. When I click save, I can see that it's got my job there, but it's still got a red dot, and I don't know what to do next. Recording is working. So over here, let's just chuck that on the ticket. It's uploading that video, so we'll just give it a, there we go. You can see the recording. Now you can do this with screenshots, you can do it with documents, you can, and what will happen is that recording has now come down in here and has taken my audio. When I click submit, this is a really important process for a support ticket. You'll notice that it's now triaging the ticket. So triage goes through a few steps. The first step is that it's going to do is it's going to build a frame of reference. Now what I want to show you on the ticket is you can see that there's a couple of workflows that are running. You can see that the tools are being used. It's asking a lot of information, and it's using a lot of tools. So as we go through this ticket, you'll see now that it's asking a question. Now there are 3 types of questions that that Kappa will ask. In this case, it's asking a question and it's doing a RAG lookup. So what is a task and how does it relate to jobs? It's looking for context, and we were able to pull three things from our blueprint. What we do to avoid swamping a ticket with irrelevant context. When you use RAG, you're looking for similarities. So it's possible that a question like this might pull back 10 or 20 similar concepts that might be or might not be relevant. So there's a little sub-process running here which is going to take that context and provide an answer to the question that's specific. So that what we're doing is we're only importing the bare minimum amount of context that is absolutely relevant for this ticket, and then we're throwing away all of that extra context so that we don't swamp the ticket with sort of semi-relevant or irrelevant context. As it runs through, it starts to ask other questions. Now you'll notice here we've got this question has a rating of 31, which means there's actually not enough context. It's looked up the most relevant information and it hasn't found anything that answers the question, and so it's come back with very little information about that. So now Kappa has added a comment. If I look at this, this is a comment that is intended for the AI. So this is intended for Cursor later when we run this ticket. So we've restated the problem, we've framed it, we've defined the language that it's using, and then we've added some considerations. So these considerations help us to, we're now pulling in information like, okay, well, has the job actually synced with Workflow Max? Is that sort of import failing? This is not words that we used. I didn't mention Workflow Max in here. So when we're doing RAG lookups and we're starting to say, okay, I need to find relevant context, these words here would never find a match against something like a Workflow Max sync. However, in our frame of reference, we're now introducing concepts that are really important to the app. So when we come to run our hydrate ticket, now we've got a whole bigger frame of reference to find information on. So as it runs through this hydrate process, that was our frame of reference. It's running through hydrate. It's asking more questions. And it's now providing relevant context. So what we're saying is, what do we know about the red dot? Indicates insufficient information to sync to Workflow Max. Cool. So we're pulling in useful information. Now what this is going to do is, as you create more and more tickets in the system, we're now going to have two sources of information that we can draw on. We can draw on previous tickets and we can draw on the blueprint for providing extra context. So this context has been added as a comment to this ticket because this ticket is a unit of work. So when we pull this down into Cursor, the context that we're going to be pulling down is the original problem, all of these questions and answers, the problem statement, the frame of reference, the relevant information. Finally, we come down and we move into solution mode. So because this is a support request, it will automatically create a solution. You can see here that we've got the concept that you can have multiple solutions on a ticket. If I scroll to the bottom, eventually it has proposed a solution to investigate the root cause, and it has basically set up some work for Cursor to do for us to provide more information and determine the root cause. So we're approaching this support request in the first step that Cursor will do for us is an investigation step, and then once we've done the investigation, it can actually implement a fix. There is an option here because sometimes we may know what solution we want. Sometimes we may jump into Cursor and we might do a bunch of development and then we decide actually that was wrong and throw it away. That's where you can very easily reject a solution and you can add a new solution. So you might come in here and go, it was user error, update the user guide. If I have more information to add, then I can, sometimes I use this field as if I'm talking to, say, a junior developer, where I say, here's what I want you to do, and I actually just give them some instructions, and then when I can tick the plan. If I'm going to do the work myself, I don't necessarily need to plan a solution, but if I'm going to use AI development tools, then I would click plan the solution. By doing this, I've now taken all of the comments and documentation that was related to this first solution, and I've removed it from the system. I can bring it back again as well. Nothing's actually been deleted, except that was a UI bug that I'll fix later. I'm just going to click play to bring it back. So a support request, the final step that it will run through is it's going to manage the SLA. So it's actually marked this ticket as blocked. Let's go down and find out why. It's blocked because more information has been requested. But you'll notice it hasn't, it's assigned a due date of today, but it hasn't assigned any users. So one thing is, when it came to identifying who the users are in this application, we need to come back to the application dashboard, click on Manage Application, and we need to set up some roles. So this is really just telling the AI who the team members are. So if I said that I'm a developer, then it's now allowed to assign that ticket to me. If I said I was an account manager or the customer or a product manager, it would start to assign different types of tickets to me. So back here, we now have a support ticket. However, while doing that, our onboarding ticket has completed, and so I want to show you the next step. So there's a few options here in the onboarding board, and the one I want to show you is analyze code base. But what I find sometimes more useful is to write the user guide. When you analyze a code base, actually let's do both, because a big part of the system is the Workflow Max sync. Now, a user guide or users, they don't care how the Workflow Max integration works, but I would like some more information. So I'm just going to put in the description, focus on the Workflow Max integration. I'm able to give it some guidance here that will help scope it, but if I don't give it any guidance, it's going to analyze the whole code base. Now, when we're analyzing a code base, this needs to be broken down. This is a bit of a divide and conquer kind of a problem. We don't want to just jump into Cursor or Claude Code and analyze it in one hit. So so this ticket here, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to create a plan. So you can see that it's just running through the tools currently while it builds its own frame of reference again, asks a few questions. Now, because I gave it a very specific instruction, it's going to come back with a plan to do that one thing. While we wait for that ticket to run, I'm going to do another one, and I'm going to ask it to write a user guide. Now, if I just ask for a user guide, it's going to use the information that it knows to start planning a user guide. Now, I find a user guide to be most useful because we are trying to build a blueprint of what the software does and what it does for users and how users interact with it. We're going to rely on Claude Code, or Cursor in this case, to analyze the code base. Telos and Kappa don't actually work directly on the code base. We rely on an AI dev agent to do that. And what we're doing is we're saying that Kappa will work on the blueprint. It's the key person knowledge that exists outside of the code base. We're relying on this partnership between two AI agents to get the best result. So writing a user guide is a really useful way for us to ask the AI to understand the software for us. So this ticket is now running a workflow, which is going to take, again, a couple of minutes. So we'll come back and look at our analyze code base. You can see that there's some instructions which the AI has written. It's used all these tools, and it's created a plan for analyzing the code base. Now, we want to break this down into lots of smaller tickets because it helps us to be a lot more specific when we're analyzing the code base. It allows us to capture information that is quite well scoped on a single ticket and then update it into the blueprint. It just works better when you're able to break down a big job like this into a smaller job. You can see that the action plan here has the first step is review plan. Now that's waiting for me to review the plan, so the AI is not allowed to complete that action, but it will do the rest. I can click edit on this and I can just change this however I like. So I could add and delete things. I might remove some of these or whatever I want to do, but I can just change that. When I click review, you'll notice now that Kappa is now going to work through these actions one at a time. Just like we saw when it was processing the blueprint, it's now just going to start creating these tickets for me. So let's jump back while it does that and look at the user guide. Because when this was running through a process, it's done the same kind of thing. What it's done is it's looked at what it knows about the application. And this was, again, based on the 10-minute demo that I gave it. And it said, well, these are the pages that I think would be useful in a user guide. Now, each of these pages is going to create a ticket, because that ticket, we're going to use Cursor to go and find more information in order to write an accurate user guide. There's no way in 10 minutes I provided enough information for a useful user guide. So again, I'm just going to review this plan and just let it run. So that's going to go away and create all of those tickets for me. So back over here in the analyzing of the code base, if we scroll down just a little bit, we'll see the tickets. These are all the child tickets that it's creating. And so we can just click into one of these. You'll notice that each of these is running its own workflow. So we're now analyzing a specific code module. It's a different workflow that will run. It's starting to go, okay, what do I know about the workflow max integration? What are some good questions to ask? So as this process runs, we've now essentially got, we're going to end up with about 20 different tickets with 20 different agents that are planning out those tickets. So now's a good point to go away and have a cup of coffee, because actually while it's doing the analysis, it's building out all those tickets. Let's do something different, because there's a really useful workflow that I use quite a lot for planning some work. Now, what I would often do is I would copy paste a transcript from a meeting in here, and I would just let it plan the work for me. But I want to show you an example of, let's just say, for example, let's do a sprint, a 2-week sprint to add an AI recommended suggestion engine to the timesheet modal. It should look at recent timesheets I've done and timesheets I often do at this time of day, and it should make some suggestions, display them in the UI, and with one click allow me to set up the client job and task. Okay, so you can imagine you had spent 30 minutes planning this out and talking about it with maybe with a client or maybe with your team, and you'd really fleshed this out. You can just drop that entire transcript in here. You'll get a far better outcome than a couple of sentences. But what I want to show you is what planning a stage will do, because this is a fairly simple workflow, which again just takes a few seconds to get some context. But what I want it to do, because I called this a sprint, so I started off by giving it some hints, and I even gave it a hint that said it's going to be 2 weeks. So again, we've got a plan, and again, we've got a review plan step at the top. But what you'll see is it's going to create a stage, which is a sprint, AI timesheet suggestions, looks like 2 weeks. It's going to set me up a Kanban board, and it's detected that there's 2 features that need to be created. Cool. I'm happy with that. I gave it very, very little information about what those features are going to do. So, I'm curious to see what kind of plan it will create. So let's jump back to our analyze code base, because we now have 5 tickets and they are pretty much ready to run. So analyze the WorkflowMax integration module. You'll notice that it's no longer running a workflow. The status is open. It now says to us when work on this ticket begins, mark it as complete, mark it as in progress. And what we'll notice down here, we can see the frame of reference, we can see a lot of questions, but now we can see some technical questions. And this is essentially setting up the work that we want Cursor to do. So we want Cursor to analyze the WorkflowMax integration, and this is ticket TIM 005. So when I jump across into Cursor, because we've got our MCP tools, I'm able to, in the chat window, say start TIM 005. I'm using the word start because there is a tool here called start ticket. So I'm, again, giving AI a clue as to what tool I would like it to use. And we use the word start because sometimes it's going to do development, sometimes it's going to do analysis, sometimes it's going to do review, sometimes it's going to reproduce a bug. We don't necessarily know what it's going to do. And the ticket, when it runs this tool is going to bring down all of that context in the ticket. So it's just brought down the entire ticket, but it's also brought down a set of instructions. And you can see the instructions, if I come to the bottom of the ticket, you'll see the instructions are these next steps that have been issued to Cursor. So it's basically telling Cursor that there's a technical question that requires answering, and we require some information about the integration. So if you look at Cursor now, it's just doing its thing. Hey, cool, I found the WorkflowMax integration, reading code, let me examine. So what I've done is I've given it a single ticket to complete, start TIM 005. But if I had come back to this parent ticket, which was TIM 003, and if I'd said start TIM 003, it would have got a different set of instructions. It would have said, hey, there are 5 child tickets and you need to complete them all. And then it would have gone through one by one and done them all. Sometimes I like to do them in batches. Sometimes I like to do them one at a time if I'm wanting to sort of keep an eye on it. If you're using Claude Code, and Cursor does as well, we haven't done this in Cursor, but in Claude Code you could just say to it, hey, can you run TIM 005 to TIM 010, run them as agents sort of simultaneously, and it'll just kick off those agents to run those tickets simultaneously. So I'm actually not doing any coding at this point, I'm collecting information, but you can see here that it's going, cool, I've got enough information to answer the technical question. Cursor and Claude Code will produce a lot of documentation, and by default it gets lost. You can ask it to write it to markdown files. We are asking it to use MCP tools. So it's going to use tools such as answer question, add ticket comment, add documentation. It'll use those tools depending on its context. So at the moment, it's using the answer question tool, and you can see that it answered the question. It's now going to use a different tool. Great, now let me add a comment with additional context, which is what we asked it to do in the instructions. So back on this ticket here, you can see that this technical question has now been answered. Cursor provided all of this information. And when you look at it, you kind of go, who really cares what the classes are? Like, is this useful? It's certainly not that useful to me, although this information here is useful. The fact that there's Xero integration and BlueRock integration, that's very relevant. How it handles JSON serialization and JWT tokens, etc. Useful stuff, but this isn't the kind of documentation that we necessarily want, and it's quite long. I don't want to read this, and it's too much. If we end up with this level of documentation as hundreds of markdown files, it becomes the half-life of that information is very, very short. So we rely on the processing of the blueprint. Here's additional information. No, that's the next steps, but additional information is going to be key findings. Okay, so I added that. Comment. It's also, you can see here, updating action items. So there is a plan, and where it's starting to, actually it's marking that one there as in progress while it does the rest. Yep, you can see it's going, yep, it's done, it's done, it's done. All of these action items are being completed by Cursor, and so it is using the tools. Now, Cursor didn't do that, answer any follow-up questions. So it didn't mark that as completed. But if I decide actually there are no follow-up questions, now that all the check boxes are complete, you'll notice that the ticket has auto-resolved itself. Now, if you'll see that it's running a workflow called add ticket to release. If this contains some development and it contained commits, then at this point it's going to build a release ticket. We approach tickets as when this ticket is complete, we close it. Now, it doesn't mean it's been released. There's a release ticket that's going to get tracked, and it's going to get closed when it goes live. But if there is a bug or more work to do, then just create another ticket. Once this ticket has been closed, you'll see there's a create new ticket button. So in this case, it's doing analysis, so it doesn't make sense to add more work. But if we're doing some development or fixing a bug and we find a problem in testing, then just create a new ticket. That allows the triage process to run again. So when you create another linked ticket with a bug, you're going to have a whole new triage, which is going to take into account the original ticket. You're actually creating a new bug that exists while the software is in a different state than when the first ticket was raised. So it doesn't make sense to just continue adding bugs and discussion and having long-running tickets. You actually want to close it off, create a new ticket. The system will keep them linked to help you manage them. Back here on our parent ticket, you can see that this one's now closed. Because I just ran the one, I would have to go in and run each ticket sort of 4 times. But what I want to show you now is based on after this analysis has run, we are now running through another blueprint process. Now, there's a lot of entries in here. This is creating a lot of entries in the blueprint, but it's not just creating them. Before, we already had a resource called Workflow Max. It's now detected that there is a second API called Workflow Max 2, which is correct. What we want it to do is maintain this documentation as we go. So back here, when we looked at Workflow Max earlier, there was essentially one sentence. Now it's bringing in additional context. There's actually 2 variants of this API. The 0 one and the Blue Rock one, bidirectional sync. So we have a little snippet of context that if we ever need to know about Workflow Max, here's everything we know. Now, in our case, this has been combined from 2 tickets, but by the time you have hundreds of tickets in the system, this piece of documentation is going to be everything we know about Workflow Max from every ticket. It doesn't have to go and do a rags lookup on dozens of tickets and pull back what's most relevant, even if it's out of date. That starts to become the problem with documentation is it's very easy for the AI to get confused over old documentation that's now partially correct and partially out of date versus new documentation, which is partially useful because it relies on some of the old, all of these sorts of problems. So we're maintaining this documentation in the blueprint. If we come back to our blueprint, you'll see we've now got 28 entries, and the application map is starting to create this idea of how the application works from a user's point of view. We're starting to bring in detailed information. Tech patterns are starting to be created. And also a user guide is starting to be created. So back to our application. I kicked off quite a few tickets all running in parallel. The analyze code base, I showed you one of those running. The user guide is a fairly similar process, and this is going to get a bit expensive. Each of these tickets might cost a couple of dollars, maybe $5 of AI tokens to process. But we're going to run through 20 tickets. Let's say we spend $100 on AI in order to build a user guide. That is cheap compared to the alternative. As long as it's building us a user guide that we are going to be able to use. We don't just want to run this process and then have some documentation that is sitting off on the side that we can't use or anything. So this is basically going to create, if when I come in and let's say calendar overview, I'm just going to pick one. Again, what it's done is it's attempted to write a user guide based on what it knows. And let's have a look. So Tim 12, while we have a look at the user guide, I'm just going to start a new tab, and I'm going to ask it to do Tim 12, and we'll let Cursor just work on that. Let's jump over to the resources. I clicked on the view button, and you'll see that there are a few resources now, including the user guide, the tech patterns. You will see style guide come in here. You'll see a database schema at some point. We obviously haven't given it any information about the user interface or the database yet. Let's look at the user guide. So it's created a number of pages in the user guide, but the problem is there are going to be massive gaps in this. So clicking view, this is a resource that I'm able to see because I'm authenticated, but you can make this a public resource if you wanted to. Really, it's a resource for two reasons. One is it's a user guide that the AI will be able to use if it needs to understand user information, but it's also a user guide that people will be able to, when you think about that problem of a key person, they know this user guide inside out because they know the application so well. If you bring in a new developer or someone who doesn't know that system, then sometimes they just need to know, how the heck do I add a timesheet? So it's working on these, it's going to refine this. So at the moment, the AI has created a menu system that doesn't necessarily make sense. As we give it more information, it will refine this user guide. But if we look at creating a timesheet entry, I think this information's pretty lightweight. I think that's what I gave it in my 10-minute video. We need a whole lot more specificity for this to be a useful user guide. And so you can see that, great, it's written some words, but it actually doesn't know some things. And so you've got all these insert screenshots, we need more information. And that's what this process over here is doing. So when I asked it to start Tim 12, this ticket has 8 technical questions. Okay, Cursor has stopped and said, would you like me to answer the questions or did you want to? Could you please investigate the code base for me? Thanks, Cursor, for checking with me, but I'd rather you just go and do it today. All right. So what I'm trying to show you is the process for analyzing your legacy code base. I'm creating a user guide because it helps us fill in all the gaps. I had to seed it with the demo, but now we're going to use Cursor to go through and basically start creating all of this user guide. The user guide, it's a user guide, so you can use it. The other one is the tech practice patterns. Now, we haven't given it a lot of information yet, but it has started to identify what it knows about the tech stack, key integrations, and it started to, again, build some documentation for us. So these tech patterns are all available as MCP tools. You'll see get resource list, get resource details, and where is it? Yeah. Anyway, you can use those tools, get resource details to get the resource, which is this tech patterns. These tech patterns will also be fully available to Kappa. Every time it's hydrating a new ticket, every time it's planning a solution, it's going to use these tech patterns, and you can edit all of this documentation. So if it's created something wrong, or there's patterns that it hasn't identified, just change it. So it's come in here, and yeah, it's picking up on different parts of the patterns. Read it if you want, or don't read it. The AI will use all of this documentation. If we come back to our ticket, so let's just check on Cursor. Excellent. I've successfully answered all 8 technical questions. I'm going to put a comment on that. Again, I could have asked it to do all of these tickets. What was it? It was 12 that I asked it to do. You'll note that this ticket is still in open status, even though Cursor is telling me that it's complete. The status of the ticket changes when Cursor uses the update action item tool. So when it marks an action item as complete, then the ticket will automatically change to in progress. If I had asked it to do a whole batch of tickets, then it would certainly be nice to set to progress. There are no actions on this ticket. That's why I didn't use it. It just answered the questions. So in this case, I have a ticket where Cursor has done its work. And what I'm going to do is just click in progress, and then I'm going to click resolved. Actually, what I might do, because demoing this, I realize that if there was just an action list on this ticket, then Cursor would have ticked it and it would have auto-resolved. So I'll go back in and I'll update the workflow, and I'll tell it to put an action list on. And that way, when you come to doing what I've just done, this ticket would, Cursor would, auto-resolve it, and you could just tell it to run the whole batch of tickets. So what we've got now running again is a big list of blueprint processing. So at this point, we focused on a user guide. So we've sort of got different information in this ticket. I haven't even looked at the kind of information that it answered here. What is the layout structure? It's asking about managers versus staff, how do users edit or open, all useful things to have in a user guide, but all very, very useful context for us to have in the blueprint. So again, we're trying to do 2 things. Our goal really isn't to create a user guide. Our goal is that in creating a user guide, we are building a very, very powerful set of context, which is the blueprint. Now, I have shown you processing a transcript, which was a demo. I've shown you analyzing some code, and I've shown you analyzing 1 page of a user guide. Through those 3 actions, the blueprint now has 38 entries in it. Earlier when we were, I guess some of these concepts are still fairly straightforward, but now we've got extra context in here, like multi-tenancy and what is an organization. I don't think I mentioned that in my, we've got 2 spellings of organization. Now, you don't need to worry about this when you start to see duplicates. I do see it occasionally. There you go, duplicates. It'll clean this up. So next time it is processing some organization information, it's going to go, I see there's 2 entries, and it's just going to merge them. So this is the problem with documentation, is it gets very, very messy and lots of duplication. And so we've built into the Delta processing just to clean stuff up as you go. Now, when it is cleaning things up, there is always a version history. So, you're never going to lose anything. You can always just, if we look at something like the Workflow Max info, which I know has been, had a couple of versions. There's 3 versions of this now. And so we can kind of see how that documentation is being changed and modified between versions of it. So let's go back to what I also kicked off. You can see there's quite a few tickets now on my onboarding, but we've also got a new board over here called AI Timesheet Suggestions. So this was the planning I did earlier where I asked it to create this new feature and put it in a sprint. Now it's done a few things, because when we come to manage application, it has created a stage, and the stage is really about reporting, and it's about tracking status, and how do we know we've completed this piece of work? Maybe we do need to estimate it, maybe we need to price it, maybe we have a deadline, all of these sorts of things. We can tell the AI about these things in these stages. There's also, it's created a board. I could take my AI suggestions and just drop it up here. I don't ever create boards. There's a lot of setup and it's quite boring, so I always just ask the AI to do it by using that plan work. Back here on the dashboard, here's our AI suggestions, and there's two pieces of work. These ran a planning workflow, and so you'll see that there's quite a lot of information. And so now when it's done this planning, because of course I could jump into ChatGPT and ask it to create me a PRD or something like that, but who cares about a PRD that's been created by an AI or an LLM that knows nothing about my application? All I care about really is, first of all, that it's created a frame of reference. It's built all of this context. It knows about our application. It knows how to do this planning. It has planned it out. I've got two choices at this point. There's a plan here, and probably what I want to do is break this down into smaller tickets. I'm looking at this and I'm going, yeah, that's all good, but am I going to do this in one hit, or am I going to break it into smaller tickets? Okay, so this is my input. If I go into Cursor and I ask it to do Tim023, it'll take this information and it will do its best. But I wouldn't do that. First of all, there's two options I've got here. I've got a big development ticket. If I decide I'm going to do it in one hit, then I'm going to add a solution. Now, at this point, I may want to add some more information to the solution, or I could just say plan this solution and hit add, and it will create a plan. When it creates the plan, it's going to refer to the technical patterns, the user guide, the style guide. It's going to refer to all of these things in creating that plan. So, all of this planning is going to be then ready for me to just jump into Cursor. And, if I did ask Cursor to do this, it would have a good shot at it, and it would probably get 80% of it done. But what, and maybe I'll show you that, but the second approach I can take, there's a couple of things I can do. Down in the chat, and this is where you are going to want to learn some of the shortcodes, because let's say I don't like the plan. Let's say I have some ideas about what I want it to do. It's creating a recommendation engine, but I might have, the planning is an iterative planning, so I can come in here and I can just use the plan dev, and you can see the description. I'm going to iterate on the plan. If I give it some more information, use an LLM. It's probably a bad idea. I wouldn't want that to be happening every single time. So I actually want it to use, maybe I want to say don't use an LLM. It will be too slow and expensive. If I do that and post that as a comment, you will notice, sorry, the page is just reloading, taking a second. You'll notice it's now running the plan development workflow again. It's actually going to come back and change this plan to incorporate that information. I use this often for taking things out of scope. If I say, actually, I don't want that, or, but that's one option. I can refine the plan, and you can refine it as many times as you like. Another option is make tickets. So actually, there's a couple of options here. I quite like the Wrangle Wrangle's got more tools available to it. Wrangle is this idea of just, put stuff where you want it to be. If you've been in a meeting and you've been rejigging things or talking about bugs or doing this or doing that, you can just go type Wrangle, create tickets, or, fix stuff up or whatever. You can be quite broad. Here I'm going to say Wrangle, create child tickets for the dev work. The Wrangle make tickets would have been a similar. Make tickets is a sort of a bit more specific. It does one thing. It will make tickets. Wrangle allows me to actually. I should have said and assign them all to Andrew. I can say that. Make them high priority, or assign them, or whatever I want to do. Wrangle will do that. So you can see it's now running Wrangle. So previously. It updated this to say don't use an LLM. I don't know where it put that information. I guess it didn't put that information. It didn't need to update the. It didn't mention using an LLM, so I guess it didn't really have much to do. What I've got here by using Wrangle is it's going cool, done. Created those five child tickets. So, where are they? There they are there. They're child tickets, part of a bigger ticket. And now my planning, is sort of broken out. So I use a mixture of both implementing big tickets versus using smaller tickets, and sometimes it's useful to approach a problem in sort of stages. It's certainly easier to do a code review in smaller steps, certainly easier to roll back. If we're gonna do the database schema first, that's something that I might have some input into. Now it doesn't really know anything about the data schema because we haven't done any code analysis yet, but if I'd gone through and completed that full code analysis, then by now it would have quite a lot of information about the database schema, and it would be able to use that in planning a ticket. Let's come back and take the timesheet modal UI enhancement ticket. It needs an API integration layer, sure. It's all words, right? There's a couple of options I've got here, because to be honest, I don't want to read these words. If I'd have a lot more confidence if I had completed the user guide, because right now it knows a limited amount of information. So if I'd gone through and actually completed the user guide sort of process and the tech analysis, I'd have a lot more confidence in planning like this. This is a little bit of a work in progress, but if you say mock-up, you could say, give me 3 options for how to display suggestions in the timesheet modal. I'm not expecting AI image generation to create a user interface design. It's just not going to do that. But what I am interested in is being able to make some decisions. And what I want when I make decisions about user interface is I want that turned into words that I can give Cursor. So image generation is probably 30 seconds or so per image. So, you can see at this point it's going, do we have a style guide? Actually, I don't think we do have a style guide yet. So it's going, oh, okay, well, do we know anything about the fonts and colors? We don't. Okay, so this is the problem you've got with a legacy application. We don't know anything about it yet. Like I said, take a couple of hours and just run through that and build that user guide following the tickets before, and you can do it in bulk. Back over here, I did Tim 12. I'll just run Tim 13 and 14, or I'll just come in here and I'll go start tickets, Tim 13, 14, 15, answer all questions. Since it asked me that before, I just want it to go away and just do those tickets. you've got to get this information where we're using Cursor as our access to the code. We're using Kappa that has access to the blueprint. We've intentionally kept these two things separate. They work well together. The image generation, as you can see, I've asked for a mock-up. It's given me a mock-up. But I asked for options. So do I want my suggestions at the top? Okay, that's one option. You can see it's summarizing the image of option number 2 currently. There we go, option number 2 down the left. Yeah, I mean, that might work better considering the size of the modal that I showed you earlier. Do I want them down the left? Actually might be nicer than across the top. We'll just wait for option number 3 here. So it's currently summarizing option number 3. Again, sometimes it'll do full visual. Okay, our suggestions as a collapsible. Okay, so why is this useful? You know, it's giving me mock-ups that, but it's allowing me to make a decision, because what it's doing is it's now, you see all this information. So if I say that I would like option 2, it's described option 2 for me. Okay, so I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say, great, let's do this. Add a solution, use option 3, use your option 3 for layout, plan the solution. Let's go back and have a look at Cursor. It's answering questions. MCP tools, what you'll find is the first time they get used, although sort of sometimes I keep on clicking add to allow list. The first time you use an MCP tool, you need to give it permission, and then you're either going to give it permission always or just once. There seems to be a little delay there. See how it's kind of giving me 5 or 10 seconds to skip the use of the tool, and then if I don't answer, it's going, okay. So, I mean, it introduces a little bit of delay, but the nice thing is I just want that to be running in the background, answering information that is just going to be building that blueprint. Over here on the development ticket, which again was quite a large one, the entire timesheet modal UI. Now, of course, I could jump into Cursor and I could have given it the same amount of information and it would have done its best. But the point is, I've got tech patterns, I've got a style guide, I've got a user guide, I've got the blueprint, I've got all of this context, and we are trying to use it all to plan out this feature. I involved myself with a little bit of decision making, and now you can see that, cool, it's running through the proposed solution workflow, asking a whole lot of more questions. Now, what I want to see is these questions being green. So it's still lacking information about the application. Again, because I'm trying to do things and compress them into, say, I don't know how far we've got it, 1 hour video. But I want to show you the plan that it creates. Right. So it's created a plan. It's created it as a checklist. It's put a lot of information here, and it's got boundaries, must not, technical constraints, success criteria, all of this kind of stuff. What I can do at this point is start a new chat, and I'm going to say start Tim025. Now that we have a development ticket, we will start to see it using different tools, and it's going to use start ticket, but it's now going to Cursor, and Claude Code has a similar process where it will run through its own planning. However, because it's using the start ticket, it's pulled down the ticket, it's pulled down the all of the context on the ticket, it's got this plan, and Kappa, and it started a conversation with Kappa. So at this point, it starts a cool. Kappa is saying you're ready to start implementation. So we're going to go with the. Oh, did I say option 3? I mean option 2. I did say option 3. Collapsible. Okay. Mistakes happen. What would I do at this point? This is where I actually want to, so I won't stop it, but let's say I developed the entire option 3. So I'm doing this out of order because it's detected that the API endpoint hasn't been implemented yet, and the API endpoint is actually in a different ticket. So this is really important that it has context of other work that's being done. I planned this work out. API endpoint's in a different ticket. It's just going to mock it out for now. Fine, that sounds good to me. But it's also going to put a comment on the ticket because when Tim024 comes along, we want Tim024 to be able to see what's happened here. Okay, so let's say fast forward, I do this development for the next 30 minutes. And then I want to roll back because I chose option 3 and I actually wanted option 2. It's easy enough to roll back the code. It's in a Git branch. It's going to automatically create a Git branch because it was told that to do that in the instructions. You can see it's using Git branch for ticket, at which point it will create a branch off master using the required Git name. Now, if you have a naming convention for your Git branches, you can jump across into the settings here. And the description that I said was quite important. You could say rules, Git branches, use the naming convention, feature / ticket number underscore short description. I like using sort of fake variables when I'm instructing AI because it just works really, really nicely and knows what the ticket number is, it knows how to create a short description, and it is able to put it into some words like that. So by default, it's using, I think the ticket, we'll see down here. I hasn't created the branch yet, but for some reason it decided to work on the main branch. No Git branch is associated with the ticket. Okay. Didn't create a Git branch, but if I add that in there, it will. And by the time you watch this video, it will be creating a Git branch because that's a bug in the workflow. You can see now that it's working away on this ticket. It's decided that the ticket is blocked. Okay, so it decided to block the ticket, but we in the workflow we tell it that if it can't proceed for any reason, then it should mark the ticket as blocked and put a comment on the ticket. However, over here, while it's marked it as blocked, it decided just to crack on with it and get it done. So what we're watching now is it's doing its work. It's documenting it as it goes. It's making a bunch of changes. It's implemented it. It's added a comment. It's ticking boxes. Obviously, the recommendations endpoint is going to provide a lot of the, is going to do most of the heavy lifting, and the UI is going to be quite basic, really. It's just going to display something. So what we want when it does development like this is we want it to capture its documentation on the ticket. So you can see here, what it's done, it created the collapsible panel design for me because that's what I asked for. Now, this is the word before, if I decide to roll this back and delete all that code, then I've got this whole plan that says use option 3, and I've got this comment that says use option 3. This is where I can come back up to the top. Sorry, I'm scrolling around a lot, but I could reject that. I could say, no, reject it. Use option 2, right? It's going to throw away all that planning and all those comments that were in relation to option 3. And it's going to start again. Same ticket, but a different solution. In conjunction with doing that, you can see it's auto-committing the code. And it's completing the ticket for me. Of course, I can roll back that commit. And so if I decide to do a rollback, I can just tell Cursor to roll back that last commit, or I can throw it away in GitLab. What I've shown you is some of the onboarding tickets that you can run. Really important with a legacy code base that we start to build up knowledge of dependencies, the infrastructure, concepts, stories. We're going to start building tech patterns. We're going to start building a user guide. These take some processing of tickets, but the work's going to be done by the AI. Then we can, I've shown you a simple support ticket, which used the AI triaging process to plan out the support ticket, and I showed you a development process where I started off with some planning and a sprint and turned it into some features. And one feature I decided just to implement, whereas the other feature is I decided to break down into smaller tickets. You can see that the UI enhancement, obviously the next step is for me to run this code and test it. But I might just implement the AI suggestion engine first because I created all these tickets. Tempted to go back and just implement the big ticket in one hit. I can delete these. I can also ask Kappa to wrangle and remove all these. But if I decide I do want to change my approach and maybe I don't want these smaller tickets, I can delete it over here. So as you go, you're going to be creating. I'm already up to over 30 tickets. To keep two things in mind, tickets start off in draft and they'll run a triage process when you submit the ticket. That's a really important process to filling the ticket with that frame of reference and hydrating it. Then when you've finished the ticket, don't worry about whether it's released or not, worry about whether you've finished the ticket or not. So you want to resolve the ticket and it'll process that information into your blueprint, your user guide, your tech patterns. It'll just update all that documentation based on the ticket. And that's kind of the process. This is what Telos is doing for you. It works beautifully in conjunction with Claude Code and Cursor. It's going to become your key person, and it's going to allow you to jump into Cursor and Claude Code and develop and maintain your legacy code base. Now, you can do this yourself using our dev mode. It's $100 per month per application plus your Claude consumption. Or if you'd like us to do it for you, then we can offer a managed service where we will support your code base for you. If you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to us at any time. Raise a support request if you would like. As you can see, we are constantly refining and improving our workflows, and some of them are up to version 100 plus as we've been refining them and making them better and better. Thanks for watching, and keep an eye on the next two videos that I'm going to be creating. One is how to build a brand new app from scratch using Cursor and Telos, and the other one will be how to create your own workflows to run inside Telos.